Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get new episodes delivered to your feed each week. I'm your host, Steve Plum, Editor-in-Chief for SME Media. I'm joined today by Lori Harbour, a longtime industry consultant who is now a partner at Wipfli, a top 25 advisory and accounting firm, which is located in Southfield, Michigan, just one tower away from SME. Although I know you're on the road today, Lori. Lori has more than 35 years of manufacturing and consulting experience and previously was the co-owner of Harbor Results. Among other things, Wipfli conducts an annual benchmarking survey on North American manufacturing trends, as well as a quarterly pulse. Lori, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thank you.
So it's been an interesting year. As they say, never a dull moment. Tell us a little bit about the latest study and the pulse results. Any top line results?
Yeah, it has definitely been an interesting year, as you said. For manufacturing today, they're dealing with just a tremendous amount of daily change, right? Probably not the least of which is just the whole tariff and trade discussion and the impact that that's having on all of them throughout the year. But on top of all of those, outside factors, manufacturing has just been down in general, right? We see most industries down, between 5% and 25%. And some there's certainly pockets of people who are doing well if for example they're in automotive and they're on the right vehicles, or if they're in some infrastructure, data centers or medical, then things are doing okay. Not stellar, but okay. Other industries are down quite a bit. So that has affected people's profitability, their top line revenue, and just overall struggle to kind of, make money in a tough environment that we've seen in 2025.
Well, you mentioned the T word, tariffs, which has been a real roller coaster this year and fueled a lot of uncertainty. And we never really know when there's going to be breaking news on the tariff front. In fact, just yesterday here in early November, the Supreme Court was hearing testimony about it, and there was back and forth whether or not it was actually going to take effect, whether it might even be some refunds. What does that all mean to manufacturers, and how can they take this all in and kind of plan for it?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a daily struggle for companies just to understand what's happening. So we're helping to counsel people. We have a tariff and trade advisory group and trying to help them understand what their HTS codes are, what's the implication of some of the things they're purchasing from other countries. They really need to study that every single week. They need someone dedicated to understanding what is happening in tariff and trade. And it's important to keep in mind that even if the Supreme Court does overturn some of these IEEPA tariffs that President Trump has put into place, he has multiple other levers to pull to put those tariffs back in place. So we really don't see things changing even if the Supreme Court overturns it. So for most companies today, the biggest issues are the steel and aluminum tariffs through the 232. If you're in metal forming or you're in die casting or forging, you got to be understanding where your metal's coming from, where it's smelted and poured. If you're a molder or a die shop, you got to understand where your tools are coming from and where the steel to make those tools came from. So it's not affecting every manufacturer across the board in a negative way, but in some cases you may not know fully what the impact is. So you've got to understand it and study it. We've not seen a boatload of reshoring. So although a lot of people think the tariffs are good from that perspective, we're not seeing a ton of that. But there's a lot to navigate for sure. And companies have got to have someone, understanding it. And it's not easy. It's definitely not easy.
You mentioned, aluminum and steel. Is it mainly on the pricing front? And if so, how much is that going up? Who's paying for it? But is it also creating some shortages?
We've not seen a ton of shortages, but it's definitely impacting the cost of steel and aluminum. So, there are certain commodities of steel and aluminum that are manufacturing based here in the U.S. purchases from Europe, from China, from other areas of the world, and that is all being tariffed at 50% for the 232 steel and aluminum tariff. But it's also implied in areas of certain equipment and machinery. So, for example, if you're a molder, back in September, they put a steel and aluminum tariff of 50% on the content of a machine, a mold machine that is steel and aluminum, which is about 95% of a piece of equipment. So it nearly doubled in price. And at the end of this week, there's more tariffs that are potentially coming. The period of time will close where they're hearing arguments on other industrial machinery, so stamping presses, die cast machines, that type of thing. If that happens, when that closes, they have a certain period of time to implement a tariff on those.
But manufacturing typically has, somewhat long lead times. Long term, there could be a shift in material usage, but that's obviously not going to happen overnight. But what are some of the things that companies can do to offset price increases as far as making smarter decisions and trying to be more efficient?
Well, I mean, there's several critical tactics that companies got to go through strategically, right? First, they have to understand and map their supply chain, like where does everything come from? What's the implication? And then they can market test and move it. But the reality is you said the key words is, how do we offset some of the increased cost? There is a lot of opportunity, and our survey shows this, that profits have shrunk. Efficiency is still it's good, but it can be way better. And because the top line revenue is down in a lot of companies, they're allowing waste to creep into their business. And so what I've been telling companies today is, we have to focus on the things we control. I don't control tariff and trade. I don't control tax policy. I can only control what's in my four walls, my use of labor, my ability to take a piece of material and transition it into a product. I've got to figure out how to be more efficient. And sometimes when we're underutilized, we allow that waste to creep in. So companies have got to get back to the basics and focus on how often, how well do I change tools? How well do I use material? How do I run my plant? What do I manage my labor? How well do I manage my labor? Which is an area of concern for me today. Our study shows in October of this year that about 2/3 of companies, and this is, 380 to 400 companies, 2/3 of them believe that their profit and their revenues will be down or flat in 2025. However, 83% of them are either hiring for growth or are holding steady on labor. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but that math doesn't work, right? We've been down substantially in profits and revenue, but we're holding on to our people, which is a phenomenon driven by COVID, right? We couldn't find people, so we went and got a bunch of people, and now we're afraid to let them go because we're afraid if the spigot turns back on, we won't be able to find people again. So that's gonna cause problems in the next year for some of these companies.
Well, the workforce shortage across all industries, but especially in manufacturing, has been ongoing for a long time and intensified in recent years, and forecast to get even more so through the next 5 years or so. At the same time, there's the skills gap with people retiring. What does that mean? As companies try to keep people on, but also adopt more automation to offset some of that. And you mentioned profits are down, and some of the ways to improve efficiency is to invest in new tools, whether it's software tools or new equipment that is more efficient. But do they have the money to do that?
Well, that's exactly the balance, right? We also seeing capital expenditures slow down a little bit. They're not going away, but they're slowing down because of the trade situation, the tariff situation. If most of our automation and our equipment is coming from somewhere outside of the US, I have to pay more for that. Interest rates are high. Profits are low, so people are being more frugal in their spending of capital, yet holding on to this labor in order to not, miss out on the revenue coming back. The challenge here is that the labor market has cooled quite a bit. We are seeing people are not jumping for 50 cents an hour like they were right after COVID when jobs were plentiful. They're keeping more of their current job intact and finding that moving is not always the greatest thing. So we have to train people. We've got to train them to be more flexible. We've got to elevate them and bring them up to speed. But we also need to either grow the top line by diversifying our business. There is business out there right now. There is other industries that are doing well. And so you have to ask yourself, if other industries are doing well and I'm flat, do I need to be looking in other ponds to fish for new work? And if I can't grow the top line in the short term, I have to right size my business. I've got to find out who are my best players and invest in them, and maybe allow some of the C players to go back into the job market and find other roles in their business. So, and then go back and find those A and B players when the market returns, right? So I know it's tough to think about letting people go in a market like this, but if we can train the best and make them more flexible, then we will be able to grow with those flexible people and do more with the same.
Are there certain sectors that stand to benefit near term that the companies should focus their efforts on?
Yeah, there are some markets that are doing very well. Not as easy to get into, but for example, aerospace and defense are doing very, very well. Now, these are not high volume markets; they tend to be lower volume, higher mix, but there's a lot of opportunity there. The bigger market that probably a lot of people in the Midwest don't think a ton about is infrastructure, data centers. We're moving into this digital economy and AI and all the things necessary. Well, we have to build the energy and the infrastructure buildings to support that. So we're seeing nuclear, solar, anything related to energy, but then these buildings that are going up or being reconfigured into data centers. The old General Motors Lordstown plant that became the Lordstown EV plant in down in Ohio is now being converted into a data center. Well, inside that data center, I need the support systems, stampings, molded parts, things that will hold, these large servers to be able to support an AI and a digital world that we're in. And outside of it, I need the energy around it, the solar fields, the nuclear power stations and things to support it. So, and it can be very high volume. And and the last thing I would say is, although I know there's a lot of people in the world who are afraid of automotive, automotive is still the largest market that we have, and 16 million units is still a really good market, right? So what areas of automotive are the best? High contented vehicles, not so high volume, but high contented, Escalades, Expeditions, Grand Wagoneers, these high dollar product. And those are still moving. People are still buying those products.
EVs have grown, some over the past 5 years, not nearly as much as had been anticipated or planned for by some companies. Is that still a potential growth market?
It is, but not in the short term. So I think we've taken a 7 to 10 year delay in real adoption of battery electric product. And I think what you're really seeing is a shift to plug-in hybrids and other types of hybrid product, which arguably might have been the best place for the OEMs to start when they decided to go into battery electric in the first place. We need to get infrastructure, charging stations, and things of that nature in place. But most importantly, we need these products to be affordable. I think the most interesting part of the study that our team developed in this fall was that when you really analyze who's buying large durable goods, boats and jet skis and snowmobiles and cars, it really is the top 20% of earners in our country. Those people who are very wealthy and got wealthier in COVID that are buying these large products because they're too expensive. So until we can develop an affordable battery electric vehicle, sub $30,000 vehicle I don't see this I don't see this product line taking off when you combine it with the fact that we have a lack of infrastructure. So we will see ICE product delayed. We've already seen it, meaning I don't mean delayed, but extended. So when they thought they would replace it with a battery electric product, it's now being extended into an ICE product. So that's why some of these markets are still very good. And it will come. It's just going to take longer of a time frame. But so basic automotive in ICE product and in plug-in hybrid will still be very, very strong because those earners are still going to buy those products.
You mentioned AI and data centers as possible growth market for conventional manufacturing, whether it's stamping or other equipment. But manufacturers are also turning to AI to try to improve their businesses and employ it. Whether it's on the business forecasting side of it, the quoting process, the design process, or even the manufacturing end. Have you seen companies starting to use AI effectively, or is it still kind of in the hype stage?
There is absolutely great opportunities, and we have a whole digital strategy team at Wipfli that is working on developing that AI technology within manufacturing. We're implementing new and interesting ways to monitor your equipment in your machine. We're doing some back office AI to help look at the flow of process, right? So the flow of an order, for example, or the flow of your AP and your AR to pay your bills and collect your bills, right? So there are back office technologies. A lot of people think floor first, right? But there are efficiencies to be had in costing and quoting and being able to pull from previous quotes and then allow AI to populate some of that, and then you modify it so it shrinks your lead time to develop a quote. But on the floor, monitoring equipment, being able to predict when your machine might go down, predict maintenance that's there. It is absolutely a real thing. The key to it is it's changing every day, right? It's a little bit like tariff and trade, meaning it's a wide open blank slate where those experts in technology can help take us to the next level through new advancements. And our team is very invested in wanting to be a leader in helping companies do that within middle market manufacturing, right? If I went to General Motors, they're probably far advanced, but that technology is not necessarily what I would put in a $50 million stamper. So what's right for that middle market company so that they don't overinvest in things that they can't really utilize, but invest in the right way to be able to help their business go to the next level?
One of the things that jumped out at me from the annual benchmarking survey was capacity utilization and how much it was down last year. Has that trend continued into 25?
Absolutely. Through October of this year, capacity is hovering around 58% utilization. And that's again across about 380, 400 companies in stamping, molding, tooling, die casting, forging, all kinds of process types. So we are seeing a lot of open capacity. I walk plants, 3 to 4 plants a week. I was in one yesterday and, like every fourth press was running. So and yet companies, this goes back to my people comment, yet companies are still operating at 3 shift, 24/5 or 24/7 because they're afraid to shut their machines down, right? So that is also part of the problem is we're staffing for shifts, yet we're running at 58% utilization. So companies need to, again, grow their top line. One of the things we're consulting heavily on today is sales process. We are stuck in kind of our old mentality of what we've sold for 25 years in our companies, and we're asking companies to get outside of that box and go to different ponds to fish in and put a process around sales to grow their brand and grow their opportunities, looking at how they cost and quote in different avenues. We tend to measure the shop floor and put a process around it, but we don't tend to do that with sales. And It's probably the number one consulting service we're doing today is helping people with their sales process and growing their top line because there are opportunities out there. You just got to find them. You got to get out of the same lake you've been fishing in.
Yeah, sometimes easier said than done, but yeah, definitely need to the old quote about continuing to do the same thing when it doesn't work out. Yeah. As far as capacity and underutilization, it seems like that would have a direct effect and impact on onshoring and whether or not it would make sense for companies to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. or launch it here to begin with if the current plants are being fully utilized. Is it a tougher sell to build a new facility now?
Well, I believe it's definitely a tougher sell to build a new facility in this country, with a few exceptions, of course. Again, there are pockets of people booming, right? Like the data center comment. But yeah, it's a harder discussion. It's frankly even a harder discussion to buy those people who are complaining to me about the tariff on their equipment that they've got to buy out of Germany or wherever else. I look at their plant and I go, you're 55% utilized. What do you need a new piece of equipment for? So yes, it's a tough sell, and the utilization factor obviously is affected by top line growth right now. So we need the economy. Excuse me. We're in a tough economy, and as I said, the top earners are buying product. That middle market earners need to see the economy turn in a way that allow them to then go buy some of these products, which will drive top line revenue. And I do believe that that is coming back. I don't think it's going to be raging in 2026. I think it's going to, be 26 will be a little better, and then 27 and 28 even better than that. So it's going to take some time, which is why I talk about right sizing. But this utilization piece is directly tied to lack of top line and their ability to fill their plants. So finding those areas of sales where you can bring it in. And it also, you have to remember too, that the onshoring piece of this is not just a capacity piece. Of course, it's a price piece, right? So when we start to get into, do we move or reshore product from Southeast Asia into the US, it's still a financial decision. Even though the OEMs, for example, in automotive buy a lot of things out of China, they're going to do a make buy decision. Is it, how much does it cost coming out of China with a tariff? And how much does it cost in the US to make it? And unfortunately, the math is still not working out, which is why we're trying to help companies understand there are ways to be more competitive. You mentioned it earlier, efficiency. Do I cost and quote correctly? If I have open capacity, do I have the ability to be a little more competitive to fill my plant? So there's a lot of strategies we're working with companies on to fill that capacity and be more competitive to be able to win that work from other regions of the world.
So the benchmarking study takes a broad, comprehensive view, industry-wide view. But I know you're a big proponent of benchmarking for individual companies as well. What are some of the things that the good companies are doing that separate them from the rest of the pack?
Great question. The benchmarking is critical for them. I mean, we have a lot of what I call top performers that do regular benchmarking and looking at their business. But the key things that we're seeing is that understanding your data. And I don't just mean benchmarking, but within your facility, how deep do you take your data out of, for example, your ERP system and make it information? Meaning, how do I use that data to understand my customer profitability, my part by part profitability, all the areas where I might have a leak in my bucket? So using my data as information and then using that data to make good decisions. Understanding today that not only the tariff and trade issue, but this one big beautiful bill has incredibly positive things for manufacturers, especially in the middle market space. So our team at Wipfli on the tax and advisory side is helping companies save hundreds of thousands of dollars since this bill came out. In going back and redoing their R&D tax returns and taking advantage of energy credits. So looking at and understanding where you can save money because tariffs may be hurting you on the other side, and then mapping your supply chain, understanding where it is. And the last two critical points are, and that I'm seeing the best of the best do, is attacking the sales process, going out and diversifying themselves, finding new companies, new logos to do business, and then absolutely attacking their operational waste. I have watched companies in the lowest of volumes. So in the last 2 years, I have several clients actually that have lost volumes to the tune of 40, 50%. And they're making more money on the bottom line because they attacked the waste in their plant. They use their labor well, and they're driving efficiency while losing at the top line. And now they've won new business, and in the next couple of years, we'll have completely turned that around. So we can't sit and say, oh, woe is me, we lost revenue at the top. We've got to go attack what we can control. And the best of the best are doing that. And they're still making double-digit profitability in a time when they're down 15, 20%. So it's doable, it's fixable. We just have to be proactive. I have a slide that I show people, which is likened to the fact that I'm a boater. And if we sit and we do nothing and we're out in the boat in the water and we have no plan and no strategy to move ahead, we're going to get flipped around in that storm, right? But if we have all the tools in place and we know our strategy, we know our plan, we can charge forward. And if we're waiting for stability, we're going to be behind because it's not coming back. So we have to start to put a strategy in place to plow through, even in the most uncertain times.
Well, it's good to know that there are still winners out there and companies succeeding in, especially with double-digit growth and profits. You're out in the field a lot. You talk to a lot of different businesses of all sizes. What are you hearing? What's the mood out there for the coming year? Is there starting to be more optimism? And what's your outlook for 26?
Yeah, we are definitely seeing people now. It's been, fall conference season, so we've seen a lot of people. I've been visiting a lot of plants. There's a lot more optimism going into 26. Through the year, optimism was kind of low, right? People were really uncertain and struggling. As we go into 26, people are a little more positive. Now, I will tell you, people are always a little more positive going into a new year, thinking things will turn. But I do think there's some foundation for that. I think we're going to see we've watched over the year inventories deplete. So that means we need to demand, large companies need more product. So you'll see some volumes come up from that. A lot of new product has been sourced in the back half of the year: automotive, appliance, medical, lots of new product coming. Now, the problem is those launches won't really affect us till later in 26 and into 27. But I do think 26 will be, maybe a slight uptick from 2025. But I think 27 and 28 will see a lot of new models being launched in many industries and volumes getting a little bit better. But I don't think 26 is going to be a floodgate opening stellar year. I think it's going to be a gradual tick up over the next couple years in terms of volume. So there's some reason to be optimistic. Hopefully we'll see tariff and trade settle in a little bit and be a little more predictable. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think there's reason to have some optimism going into next year. I just don't think the floodgates are going to open completely.
One of the pieces of advice you recommended is to be proactive instead of reactive. In real world terms, what does that mean? And what are some of the one or two pieces of advice that you'd give companies in terms of making that happen?
Well, we have to work on our business and not just in our business. So what I mean by that is a lot of times you find companies in firefighting. We have to step out of that level of uncertainty. Most importantly, for leaders of these companies, we have to be transparent and communicate with our teams. If we don't know what the growth in revenue is going to be, we have to be open and honest with them. We have to lead through that change. And then again, focus on the things we control, understand and navigate the things we don't, meaning, tax policy and tariff and trade and what's going on with our customers, but then work on our business to strategically work on the things we control, that internal plant stuff. Challenge our team to be better. right? I mean, it is coming back. We're in a very cyclical manufacturing environment, and volumes will come back. So leaders have to lead. That's probably the most important thing. Sometimes as leaders, we get paralyzed with all the uncertainty, and we have to keep moving, keep communicating, even if we don't know the answer. It's okay to say to our team, guys, not 100% sure where this is going to go, but I need your help to continue to make our plants better so that we can win new work and drive improvement. So I think the leaders have to drive that stability and help our employees. That's how we're going to retain people. And we don't want to lose people in today's world. We want to retain the best of the best.
All right. Well, it's always good to end on a positive note. Lori, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure and very informative. Where can listeners go if they want to learn more about Wipfli and the latest benchmarking study?
Yeah, our team at Wipfli is definitely here and ready to help out in all aspects of the business. Our website is www.wipfli.com, and on that you can find all of the many services that we have to support middle market manufacturers, as well as other companies that we support throughout the U.S. region.
And to learn more about the latest manufacturing trends and hear more of our podcasts, visit advancedmanufacturing.org and be sure to like and subscribe to our feed.